Peace everyone, Unmask here, and welcome to another episode of Peaceful Pastels. I hope you're having a wonderful day. In this episode, we are going to be creating a starry night sky. And as usual, we'll be using the colors from the Season 1 Starter Pack, which you can get using the link in the description. Also, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss new episodes. Anyways, let's get started. So the first color we are going to use is our light cobalt. I'm going to start with just a line dividing our paper here. And then I'm going to create kind of the body of color that we're going to use. So we're going to have the cobalt coming up like this and stretching into the sky. And then taking up most of the horizon. At first, this is going to look like just a big old unorganized blob of color. That's essentially how these types of skies start out. So it is very, very simplistic. This might end up looking like the most complex sky of this series, but the easiest one to actually create. So just kind of an abstract blob of color. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually mirror that over our line here. So it's going to come like this, and then the blue will be stretched out similarly. Just like that. So you can kind of see how the shape is just mirrored across the horizon. And that's because we're going to have the water down here. And then now I'm going to grab the pure lavender, nice pure lavender color, and we're just going to kind of start coming in with some of our other color. And we're going to use pretty much all of the colors that we have in our Season 1 Starter Pack. Do the same thing down here. Add some of this pure lavender. And you know what? I want to use some of that leaf green. So I'm going to add some of the leaf green right over top of the light cobalt. Just to have, when we blend it out, it's going to look pretty turquoise-like. So mix those two colors together. I'm going to then grab the powder blue and add some of that on the inside of our pure lavender here. Now you can actually use just about any color that you want for this part of the sky. These colors actually don't really matter that much. You can go with blues, you can go with purples, you can go with oranges and yellows, and pretty much any color that you want you can go with. And I'm going to use some of the tangerine color also in this. So some of the tangerine right in here in the middle. And I'm going to use some white also to brighten this area. So just grab the white, because I want this part of the sky to be kind of light. I don't want it to be as dark as the tangerine color is, so I'm just using the white to kind of brighten up this part of the sky. And you can still see how abstract and just kind of random these shapes are. You can go with different shapes, and as long as you blend it out the way that I'm going to blend out my randomized shape here, you're going to end up with something that looks perfectly fine. All right, let's go with the dark violet, and I'm going to kind of use this color around the cobalt here. applying a very generous amount of all of these colors, by the way. And then I'm going to switch back again to the light cobalt just to make sure that I have enough pigment on the paper for blending. There we go. So a very, very generous amount of the pastels here. And let's see, what else do I want to maybe do? Let's add a little bit more of the tangerine, I think. So I'm just going to scribble in a little bit more of the tangerine. Literally scribbling it in. And yeah, I think that's good. Let's go ahead and start blending this. So just like any other project, you usually want to start in the light colors. So I'm just going to start in the white and tangerine powder blue mix here and just kind of soften this, get rid of the graininess that the pastels do when you apply them. So just try to soften it as much as I can, staying away from any of the dark colors right now. So just soften that a little bit. And then jump down here into this area. Do the same thing for the light colors first. All right, and now we'll get into the powder blue lavender section. Trying to keep the colors as separated as possible, while creating like a soft gradient that goes from one color to the other. And that can be kind of difficult to do, but you can always apply more layers to help you out later on. You don't have to try to do it in one single motion or one attempt. So staying more in the lavender, light cobalt, or powder blue, I mean, right around those lighter colors. Mixing all of these colors together will get you closer to gray, and then things will start muddying up. So you do have to be really, really careful not to bring too much of all of the colors together in one spot. So you got to be kind of careful with that. So just keep that in mind when you are blending. All right, now I'm going to go into the darker colors, so the light cobalt and the leaf green, getting those colors kind of mixed together a little bit more. Try to steer clear of the dark violet so I don't get those darker colors in the lighter stuff here. There we go. Finish blending out the light cobalt leaf green, and you can kind of just see the randomness of the shapes that I've created so far. No drawing skills required. In fact, I think the worse you are at drawing is probably going to help you create such a sky. Because you really just want the shapes to be sporadic and incoherent. You don't really want to be able to identify anything in the shapes here. Keep them very randomized and just shapeless, formless, that kind of thing. We're giving the sky a little bit of glowing effect using these brighter colors, but like I said, you don't have to use the tangerine color. You could stick more towards like the blues and greens if you wanted to, but I would still recommend you having a lighter area of the sky using some of the either the cool gray, number one, or the white. Choice is totally up to you. All right, now that those areas are blended out pretty well, I'm going to creep into the dark violet as it mixes with the light cobalt. And I'm just going to kind of spread that out across the paper where I didn't apply any pastel at all. So just kind of start fading that into the paper. Because the next thing that we need to do is we need to darken the area of the sky around this kind of galactic shape that is appearing in the sky. And we don't want to bring the black into the colors. We want to bring the colors into the black. That way our colors stay vibrant and bright and they don't get desaturated by mixing black into them. Because although black is really good to darken colors, when you need a darker value of something, the downside of using black is that it will desaturate the color, so it won't be as pretty, I guess you could describe it. Just won't be as a pretty of a color. It'd be kind of muddy looking. So we want to try to utilize the black the best we can without bringing it into our really nice, pretty colors. And so that's why we start these skies with just like all the vibrancy that we want. And like I said, you could have done this part with any type of color that you could have went red, you could have went green. I can't emphasize the degree of freedom you have with your color choice enough, because you really could have just picked any colors. The key features that you want to look for is value changes. And so the area here is brighter, kind of white orange type of color, and then it goes to a slightly darker blue, and then the dark violet is kind of the darkest color. Alrighty, I think, let's see here, I'm going to use some of the cool gray. So this is the cool gray number 1. I'm just going to bring some of this in to brighten some of the areas that the light cobalt just kind of overpowers a bit, I feel like. So I'm just going to bring in a little bit of this cool gray to brighten things without taking too much of the saturation away, because this will also have the same effect that black does. And now I need to flip my sponge knife over so I can use a clean side. I don't want to bring those dark violets into it. So let's see, let's just start here, and I'm just going to keep smoothing things out. Smooth out the cool gray a little bit. There we go. I don't want to work too fast into the cobalt and leaf green areas, because I know I have to do the water down here, so I'm kind of working myself back and forth between the light colors and then slowly inching out towards those darker colors. Spend plenty of time here with the blending stage. You want everything to be really, really soft. You want to get rid of like as much texture as you can, because that's going to allow the stars we add later on to really kind of pop and stand off the page. All right, I think that is going to do it. Give it one more quick soft blend before we start adding in our black. So just like that. So grabbing the black now, we're going to work around the dark violet. And like I said, we don't want to bring too much of the black into the color, so I'm going to leave a little bit of space here between the black and the dark violet. And you can always add the dark violet over top of the black to kind of bridge that gap there. So I'm going to generously apply my black everywhere else, leaving just a little bit of a gap there between the dark violet. There we go. Now I'm just going to grab the dark violet and apply that right over top of that edge that we kind of left the gap. Work the dark violet into the black just a little bit. Something like that. And then before we blend this out, I'm going to add a little bit of the light cobalt into the black as well. So I'll just do a few streaks of the light cobalt. There we go. Grab the blender and I'm just going to just start blending this out. Like I said, we want to be careful with the black. We don't want to bring too much of it into the dark violet. So keep that in mind when you're blending. Just take your time with it. And that dark violet and that light cobalt, what it's going to do is it's going to take that black and it's going to turn it more towards gray in value. So it's not going to be as dark once you start blending those other colors into it. So we'll have to apply some more black to get the really dark sky that we want. Because we want the black to be really dark and deep. And so we'll have to add a little bit more. All right, there we go. Starting to look pretty good. We just need that transition from the lavender, or not the lavender, but the dark violet into the black to be a bit smoother. Right now it's not quite as smooth as we would want. So now we have to start kind of working that transition a little bit between the dark violet and the black. And you may need to slow down a little bit with your blending and just kind of work it in cautiously like this. You may need to add some more black, you may need to add some more violet and kind of get those colors a bit thicker in those areas of the paper and just slowly mix them together. So there's a few things that you might need to do to get that transition to feel and look a little bit more natural. Just be sure that whatever path you take to do that, you just spend adequate time. Don't rush. You don't have to feel like you got to keep up with me doing this project. I know I might be working a little bit fast for some people. You don't have to keep up with me. So skies like this, as I described, are probably one of the easiest because your color choices really, they don't matter as much when you're trying to create a sky, a believable, blue sky with clouds and whatnot. Here, The shapes don't matter, the highlights don't really matter. There's no real object that you have to be creating, like clouds. Clouds, you know, you have to make those look like clouds for people to think that they're clouds. But on skies like this, where there is no clouds, it's just kind of this nebulous type shape that's just an abstract blob in the sky. Once you add the stars on top of it, everybody accepts it for exactly what it is. And that's what makes these skies so simple. But you want to make sure that your foundation that you lay the stars on top of is really, really soft and just blended out. And that's why I like to use, you know, really bright colors for these kinds of skies, because it just creates something really interesting to look at. And then once you smooth everything out and you have that really good soft foundation, once you put the stars on there, it just completely transforms the sky. It goes from something that just looks very abstract. There's nothing spectacular or realistic about this particular sky as it is now. But once we start adding stars to it, then the context of these colors creates that really interesting galactic looking sky. And you can use this same type of technique to create like northern light landscapes. You just have to use the appropriate colors and put them in the appropriate place, because the northern lights kind of create almost like a horizontal jagged or diagonally jagged shape across the sky. And so you still have these dark colors that are cut with these bright colors. And so the northern lights tend to lean towards the blues and greens more so, at least the pictures that I've seen of it. So you might not see things like the orange and yellows as bright as I have them here. In fact, I don't know if skies like this truly exist anywhere, but maybe in astrophotography you might see something this colorful and unique. But most likely not with just your human eye. Probably need a camera to capture these types of colors. Alright, so I'm going to add a little bit more of my dark violet here to help me out with the transition. Just in a few areas where I feel like the black, the edge where I applied the black is just, it's too strong of an edge. I feel like the sky appears pretty good, but this edge here, just a bit too rough for me. A little bit of the dark violet. I'm going to add a little bit more of the light cobalt also in that area. Just like that. And then I'll go ahead and apply some more black, mostly just in the corner areas where I really want it to be as dark as I can get it. A little bit of black up here. A little bit more down here. And a little bit over here in this corner. Alrighty, and let's see here. I'm just gonna start with the violet cobalt mixture that I created there. See if I can't get that to fade into the black a little bit more naturally. Like I said, you gotta be careful with the black, because as you bring it into the colors, they're gonna get less saturated. They're not gonna be as vibrant as they are in the center. So you have to just balance out where you start the transition and how you mix those colors together, because as you can see, I added all that violet and cobalt there, but it's basically just a gray now that has like the remnants of violet and cobalt. So just got to be aware of how that mixture occurs and what it looks like after the fact. I think that one there looks a lot better now. And then down here, just soften that. Yeah, I like the hard edges kind of going away a bit. So I feel like that additional color, or that additional application of the violet and cobalt really helped. Now I'm just going to blend out the dark black one last time. And then I think we are going to be ready to put in our stars. And you can probably imagine how we're going to do the stars based on previous episodes. All right. Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with that. I really like those colors. So now it's time for stars. Anyways, if you haven't guessed already and gotten your craft knife out, of course the method we'll be using to create some of the stars is to just scrape some of the white pastel into the sky. Now, when I do grass and stuff, I like to hold the pastel really close to the paper. It gives you a lot of control and placement. But when it comes to stars, I like to kind of hold it a little bit higher over the paper. That way they fall and they kind of sprinkle and they spread out a little bit farther. So this has a little bit less control when you're up higher. And it even takes like a full second or two for the pastel to reach the paper because you're up so high, and it's just flaking off like a little bit of dust. And just the subtle amount of wind will kind of randomize where it falls, and then when you want more control, you can get a little bit closer to the paper. So I want some of the stars to be kind of really, really dense where it's brighter. It's a really dense stars up there. And then maybe some, like a really dense beam of stars kind of coming from the center, kind of working their way up through that brighter section. So something like that. I'll put some stars. Now this is water down here, so I'll just put a few stars down here. Since there's waves down here, the stars aren't going to reflect in the water as much as they are as they'll show up in the sky. So there's a little less stars down here. But yeah, just remember this down here is supposed to be water, and it will make more sense once we add the horizon details, which is just going to be like a little island with some trees. But anyways, so that's all the time it takes to add in the stars. So I'm going to set my craft knife to the side, and of course I'm going to take my glassine paper and just push that pastel right into the paper there. And remember, you don't have to press hard to do this. It takes very little pressure, so there we go. And those stars are now permanently on the pastel mat. And what you can do, you don't have to do just white stars. You could have done some blue stars, or you could have done some tangerine or yellow stars. I'm going to just stick with white. I don't think, I've done different colors in the past, and I don't think it really makes too big of a difference, but feel free to use whatever colors you want for the stars. I'm just going to come in here and add a few brighter stars with the actual pastel. So the best way to do this and not make a mess of your paper, find any edge on the pastel, it doesn't matter which edge it is, just something where you can touch the paper and then just give it a little bit of a spin, like just kind of move it back and forth a little bit. And you can just pick out some spots where you want bigger stars. Now, if you want a shooting star, so let's say I kind of want, let's say right here. Just going to put a shooting star right there. I'm going to use the side of my pinky and touch it and then just drag it. You can use your blender if you want, but So you're just taking that dot and you're just kind of sweeping back a little bit of a tail. And you can see I have a little shooting star there now. That's all I'm going to do for the sky. And so now it is time to move on to the horizon details, which, like I said, is just going to be kind of a little island with some trees on it. So I'm going to start off with my black, and I'm just going to come right here in the middle and kind of create my little island. And I'm just going to come maybe 3/4 of the way across the paper. It's not going to stretch all the way across. And I'll just give it a little bit of volume here. So something real simple like that. I'm just going to fill that in. So this is what's going to separate the sky from the water, just kind of this little peninsula of land coming out into the scene. Just like that. Let's just quickly smooth it out. Kind of use your blending knife here to sharpen the edges. So you remember, this is separating, this land is separates the sky from the water. So the edge down here is the water line. So usually that's pretty flat, so just keep that in mind. Water lines tend to be, unless the land is curved itself drastically, it will usually appear to be very, very level, very, very flat. Whereas the top doesn't really matter that much because there's going to be vegetation, there's going to be some trees and plants and stuff. And so the top side doesn't have to be as straight as the water line. So this is the line that you really care about. The top line is not as important. Let's kind of taper that off the best we can. Something like that. There we go. And now I'm just going to take the black and I'm going to put in a few trees here. So let's see, I'm going to just put a tree here, a tall tree here, one beside it, and then 3 trees right here, and then maybe one more right here. Yeah, and maybe a small one there, maybe 2 small ones. Yeah, just something like that. Maybe you could even argue that that's a person standing there. And just like we've done trees in the past, we're just going to start with like this idea of a triangle, like a tall triangle, and just going to do dashed lines and slowly get wider as you get down to the bottom. You can do one side at a time if you want, if that's easier for you. Of the tree, I mean. You can do this with pastel pencils if you have them, but as you can see, you can do it without pastel pencils, so don't feel obligated to buy them or anything in order to do this. They don't have to be, perfectly drawn. If you get the general shape of the tree, then the viewer will see it as a tree. As you can tell, my trees are not hyper realistic in any way, but they still end up looking like trees and still look pretty good, in my opinion. You can do different types of trees if you want to, maybe try to add like a branch or two, or just a variation if you feel like these types of trees are not what you want in your scene. So there's just a bunch of different things that you can add to make this your own project. You can either stick with exactly what I'm doing, or you can branch off and explore your own ideas. These tiny trees are going to be kind of difficult. we are. Let's see. Let's use some of our olive here. I'm gonna add a little bit of olive green to the trees here so they're not just pure black. Maybe add a little bit of olive into the land itself just to give it a tiny bit of variation of values and colors there. Kind of create maybe sensation that there's some grass or something. Maybe I can add some of the gray to create some rocks. So there's a little bit of grass into the scene. I'll use the cool gray number 6 to maybe throw in a bit of texture. Maybe there's some rocks. A bit of rocks into the scene. Use the cool gray number 1 to attempt to create a highlight on the tree trunks here. Just highlight the tree a little bit, kind of make it feel a little bit more three-dimensional by bringing the tree trunk down onto the land instead of it feeling like it's just growing right off the top. By doing this, adding just a tiny bit of a highlight, it kind of makes the tree feel like it's actually on the ground and not floating above it. There we go, just a tiny bit of extra detail. And I'll use the blending knife to kind of tap some of those colors into place a little bit and just blend them into the black a bit more. And I think I'm going to leave the trees a bit textured, so I'm not going to blend out the trees. I'm just going to leave that stuff there. And the last thing that we want to do is grab the white. I'm going to create kind of a water line here with the white. So just kind of following the land and bringing a bit of white there. And then I'm going to create some waves with the thinnest possible white lines that I can create here. Just some motion in the water. Just so the viewer knows that this is not just one big sky and some floating land. I want to differentiate the water from the sky. So just really, really lightly with the edge of my white here, just giving it some ripples. You can use I think I'm going to use the light cobalt to give the water some ripples of blue. Where it's black. And I can use this blue also to create some shadows of ripples throughout this brighter area here. Very, very small effect. Very easy to overdo this, so just try not to overdo it too much. There we go. And I'm just going to use my pinky here to smooth out some of those ripples. My pinky is the only clean finger, so that's why I'm using it. If you happen to have a clean finger, feel free to use that one, but my pinky is pretty much the only finger that hasn't been dragged through all the pastels, so. Just kind of softening those ripples so they have a little less texture to them. And there we go. I think that's going to do it. And of course it is time to untape our pastel painting here. My favorite stage of any project. The clean border will really make this project pop off the page. Having that white border is just so great. And here we are, everyone, our finished painting. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I look forward to seeing your pastel painting. So be sure to tag your painting with hashtag Peaceful Pastels when you share it on social media. Thank you again for watching. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the next episode. Give the video a thumbs up for me, and have a wonderful day. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.